is a how-to-use guide for the recommended grass and clover list handbook. My name is Liz Genever. I work for Eblex. We're one of the project partners within the R&D project. I'm going to take you through the handbook, which is the smaller version of the recommended grass and clover list. Just for information, this is a cross-industry project. It involves the British Society of Plant Breeders, Agriculture and Horticultural Development Board, which is Dairy Co and Eblex, and Hybrid Kid Cymru, which is the Welsh Levy Board for red meat. It also involves British Grassland Society. What is interesting is the funding has changed in 2012, which means now the data is available to all. This doesn't necessarily affect the handbook, but it does affect the full list. So you have to, if you are after the full data, you need to look to the full list, or the merchant's list as it's also known. What is crucial to know about the recommended list, it builds on information already collected as part of the national list grass testing, and what we have within the recommended list is an additional 3 years of testing. So the varieties are sown for another 3 years and information is gathered from them. What then happens is the recommended grass and clover list crop committee decides if those varieties are good enough to be listed. And what is crucial there is that it has to be better than what is already on the list. So it can only sort of knock varieties off. So it means that we don't just keep adding and adding to the list. And 1 in 20 of the perennial ryegrasses make it to full recommendation. So it is quite a tight list to get onto. So we are certainly looking at the elite grasses available in the UK. So how is the data collected? We are currently using 5 trial sites to collect the information. There is NIAB tag in Tadcaster, IBERS Aberystwyth, Eurograss breeding in Wardington, DLF trifolium in Didbrook, and we also have a site running at Darlington in the southwest, and that main priority is disease. There's 2 main ways of collecting the information. 2 years out of the 3 there is a conservation cut, and that is used to simulate silage. And there's also a simulated grazing management in the 2nd year of that 3-year cycle. That basically means that grass is cut every 3 weeks compared to 6 weeks for the conservation cut. With certain varieties, the conservation and rotational grazing management is used for white clover and also Italians. There's slightly different protocols depending on the types of grasses you're looking at. Quality is measured, so currently D value is collected. As I mentioned, disease is encouraged at Darlington to really look at how resistant they are to the most commonly grass diseases, and coming online in 2013 is a new site in Worcestershire. What is important to know is all this testing occurs in plots sown in a grass field, no greenhouses involved, and it is, where possible, trying to replicate on-farm conditions. So as I mentioned, we're now going to be looking at the handbook, which is the one on the left. There is also the full list available. Both of these can be downloaded from the British Grassland site. So if we just go back to the handbook, it is basic information of when to reseed is also included in it. We also have a bit about selecting the right types of grasses, probably one of the most crucial decisions to select the right type for your purpose. It also goes through some example mixtures, which may not fit every system, but it's just a guide in terms of making you think about what is important within your reseed. And there's also a very useful flow chart at the back of the book, thinking about pasture improvement and to focus on soil conditions and fertility, as well as grass variety choice. So if we look at page 10, I'm just going to run you through what the tables, or how to read the tables. So everything is listed according to heading date, and generally split, or always split, into diploids and tetraploids, sometimes on the same page, sometimes on different ones. It's then listed on variety name. We have some information on simulated grazing management, which is this frequent cutting, and then we have information about the total annual yield. So 100 means it's average, and for this is 10.53 tonnes of dry matter per hectare. So if the number is over 100, it's above average, then below 100, below average. And next to that is D value, which is just a measure of quality, and that's just listed as total D value, which is the percentage of digestibility within that crop. Conservation management is the next column. Again, this is the sort of every 6 weeks cutting regime that occurs. Similarly, we have total annual yield, and in this example, the average is actually 15.16 tonnes of dry matter per hectare. Same again, above 100, above average, below 100, below average. Relatively simple to look at. We also cover D value in that example too. There is a measure of ground cover which does indicate persistency, but please remember these crops are only generally in the ground for 3 years, so it doesn't measure persistency for a huge amount of time. 1 being poor, 9 being good, and there's also an element of crown rust resistance listed here. Again, 1 being poor, 9 being good. If we look to Italians, again, similar principle, all generally listed on, always listed on heading dates, separated into diploids and tetraploids. Variety name is there. Total annual yield, again, same principle, 100 being the average, above 100, above average, below 100, below average. D values listed, again, you can see Italians tend to be slightly lower D value than the perennials we just looked at. Early spring growth, important in an Italian system. Again, there's 2 measures of disease resistance. One is ryegrass mosaic virus and the other is mildew. What's important to remember with these disease resistances, if the number is in brackets, it generally means there's not quite enough data to be completely reassured what that value is. So just look at it with caution. As I said, mildew resistance is also listed, and there's information on the first conservation cut. Also listed within the handbook are hybrid ryegrasses and also timothy. Really similar principle to what I've just gone through in terms of how you look at the tables. We then move on to white clover, which is actually on page 18 of that handbook. This is listed by leaf size, so smallest to largest. There's also variety name there. We then move through total yield of clover, and that's taken in its 3rd harvest yield. And again, it's 100 equals the average, so below 100, below average. We also have total yield of grass and clover, and this sort of basically highlights how well that clover behaves when it's grown with grass. Again, 100 being average. We have autumn ground cover under light defoliation, which gives an indication of rotational grazing or silaging, and also after hard defoliation, which tries to replicate hard sheet grazing in the autumn. So again, you can see how different those clovers react under those different systems. Red clover, and the important thing to remember about red clover within the handbook, and actually in the full list, it's a descriptive list. This basically means that there isn't the rigour behind it. Basically, any variety of red clover that's put forward is put on this list. They don't have an ability to chuck clovers out currently. It's listed on variety name, and then we go through yield of first cup in first harvest yield, year, which generally is the year after it was sown. Total annual yield, again with this 100 being average. We also list crude protein, and there's also a measure of ground cover percentage, and that's taken in the 2nd harvest year. Again, trying to give an indication of persistency. So basically, the handbook is there to help decisions. The first question you need to ask yourself is on the list. So when you get a mixture from a merchant, go through and just check those varieties are on the list. That means they are the best varieties on offer in England and Wales currently. Also, a question to ask yourself and the merchant is this the right type of grass or clover for that field or my objective? Thank you very much.